What's up, everybody? So let's talk about a really unique mindset. But I want to tell you a story first. I went to a birthday party years ago. I went with my kids. It was, people we kind of sort of knew, and it was at this karate studio. And the kids had fun. It looked like fun. And of course, they got an offer to try it out for a few weeks. So we did. And I'm a group fitness instructor, and that's not really the type of physical activity that I used to, but I had some experience in kickboxing and dancing and so anyway, the kids were kind of young, and we just decided we'll go for it and try it out. Now, this was leadership martial arts, Taekwondo, and I really liked that aspect of it. I liked that we talked about how to perform in school, and they got, the kids would get these little ribbons or tape on their belts if they came back and they had check marks. So we had this little check sheet for habits, daily habits, and if they turned it in, then they got to celebrate in class, and Red clapped for them, and it was really cool, and I really enjoyed that. The adults never did it. I'm like, we should. Nobody said we couldn't. So that was one of my first lessons that I learned. Now, here's where the mindset comes in. And I'm gonna tell you black belt mindset. I got my black belt in March of 2022, and I obviously had to do a lot of my training from home, virtually, sometimes one-on-one in the studio, just with, the instructor in a bag. And I kind of missed out on a lot of the things that I had looked forward to. But that's part of the process. Part of the process is being able to adapt to what's going on around you. And you know what? It would have been so easy to quit. And I'll tell you why. My kids quit halfway through, and it was a struggle taking them all the time. But I was getting something out of it. I wanted to keep going. We had government shutdown, so we didn't know when we were going to get paid, and should we put it on break? I didn't want to. I didn't want to pause it. I wanted to keep going because that was the thing that it was doing for me, even when the kids decided they didn't want to do it anymore. And to kind of keep this short, going through the pandemic, it was, how bad do I really want this? I'm so close. And it was tough. I mean, I did my black belt test wearing a mask, and it was a lot. It was a lot of physical work, and we did it. I had amazing people beside me, and it transitioned from, the lower level classes being a lot of kids to when we got to the higher level, you had more adults in there. And so you were getting pushed a lot stronger. The thing about getting your black belt is this. There's going to be a lot of repetition. There's going to be a lot of stuff that you already know. A lot of stuff that is easy in some ways. But there's going to be days that you show up, and even though you know it, you don't want to do it. Even though you know it, you still skip something. Now, maybe I could have gotten this black belt script, if you will, and said, okay, I'll just memorize that and then get checked out. No, it took 3 years. 3 years of consistent practice, repeating the same movements over and over and over and over, and drill it into your head constantly. saying the same intro, saying the same outro, saying, just all the different things that are a part of the class format. And it was just constant repetition. And you know what happens? It's a staircase. I walk in, I'm a white belt. Sure, I could memorize all the moves. But if I spent 3 years practicing, guess what happens up here? It becomes ingrained. I no longer need a cheat sheet. I no longer need a habit tracker. I no longer need to have, an instructor blindfolding me and making me count to 100 while I'm memorizing form. I mean, because it's inside, becomes a part of you. So when you're wearing that black belt, when you tie on that black belt with your name on it, I can't even describe the feeling. And it's not euphoric, which was kind of, for me, it was a little anticlimactic, right? Because I'm like, man, I worked so hard to get here. How come this isn't more climatic than this? It's because each step was designed to get me to that spot. So that when I got there, I was supposed to be there. There was no accident. There was no skipping steps. There was no, this was easy. Up until the very last day, up until the day that I put on that black belt with my name on it, it was still hard. It was still practice. There were even things in my test that I could have done better. I got to, there was this one self-defense thing that we had to do, and I kind of froze. But I just spent an entire weekend practicing all day long so that when that test came, I would be ready. And I still needed more practice. So my point to this is that when we're going through personal development, when we're trying to create I'm calling this a black belt mindset, when we're trying to create this mindset, this new mindset, just because we know what we know doesn't mean we're prepared. It doesn't mean that there's still not an opportunity to learn more. So as you're going through this, as you're going through your own personal development journey, just know that there's going to be days where it's like, well, I already know this. I want you to challenge yourself to go beyond, to dig a little bit deeper in that. So if you already know this piece of it, how can you dissect it to go a little bit further? What is it that you need to practice so that becomes so ingrained in you that there is no question that if I were to go step onto the mat tonight, that I couldn't pass that test again? Because it's here. It's a part of me. I want that for you. I want you to be able to take all of the tools that you receive when you're doing your personal development journey and it become a part of you. There is no question. I know how to do this. There's going to be stumbles. There's going to be times where I should know this. But right now, in this moment, I need to go back. I need to just, there's something I'm going to hear that's going to bring me back. So I'll give you a recent example. So I've gone through this mentorship, and it's been over 5 years that I've been in this mentorship. And it began as like a 9-week thing, and we would do 9 weeks, and then we would repeat the 9 weeks. And it was, the same topics, maybe presented a little bit differently, but for the most part, it was just on repeat. And so I would do a couple times, and then I'd not do a couple, and then I'd go back, and I'm like, oh, I hear it different. Oh, I hear it different. Well, fast forward. Now, over 5 years in, now when I hear it, I'm like, I know what you're going to say. But there's still times where I'm taking notes because I'm like, either I didn't hear that last time, or I'm hearing it for the first time. We have an attention span that's only going to allow us to take in so much. So like if you've ever gone to a conference, it's all day, it's all weekend, and you're carrying around this notebook and you're writing as fast as you can. You're barely even taking in what they're saying up there. And then you go home and you're so energized after that during the weekend that you go home and you're like, what happens to all those notes? I can tell you, I've got plenty of journals up here from those types of events where the action never took place. I was there. I watched it. I listened. I took notes. But there was no action. And there's probably gold all throughout these notebooks that I could dig up, that I could personally go in and be my own gold digger and find just something. And it may be like, oh yeah, I remember this. But could I go deeper? Could I dig a little bit more? Could I say, maybe I saw it that way then, but I've grown. I've grown. So how does this apply to me right now? When we're going through the pillars, when we're going through like the steps of, getting to your black belt, there has to be like this combination of things that pulls itself together to get to this point. And when we're working with the pillars, they really have to have a solid foundation. And when I say solid foundation, we're not sitting in survival mode. Survival mode is going to keep us right here. We have to pull ourselves out of survival and start building up. Start going past basic form and start getting more into, where we're actually putting on gear and we're sparring with other people. Okay, so that's the whole thing with, doing your black belt. You don't get to spar right away. You don't get to spar until you've committed to being part of, the black belt club. You don't get to just put on that helmet. You don't get to have a baton. You don't get to put on a breastplate or the shoes. You don't get to do any of that until you've laid that foundation, until you've said, you know what? I know my basic form. I know how to protect myself. I know how to get out there and I know how to throw a jab, a cross, a punch. I know how to jump kick. I know how to do all of these things so that when I step into battle, I know what I'm doing. It's the same thing up here. That whole experience of being in Taekwondo, it was not the physical part. The physical part for me as a fitness professional, that was not the challenge. The challenge was always here. I wasn't the teacher. I had to be the student. I had to sit down and humble myself and say, this is my time to learn. This is my time to do something different. This is my time to show up and implement all these little tiny pieces that I'm putting together. So yeah, I've been throwing a jab for 3 years. But that jab on day 1 and that jab on day 909, you know what I mean? Hits different. It hits different. So I really want this to sit with you, because going through a personal development journey is not easy. Going on a black belt journey is not easy. But they really do complement each other, because without the right mindset, without pure dedication, pure, like, you have to want it. You have to want it. Because it's just like going to the conference and taking the notes. If you go home and do nothing with it, then you get nothing out of it. If I showed up and I'm just throwing those same week 1 punches for 3 years, then I got nothing out of it. But I couldn't have gotten there. I can't throw the same punches as a day 1. I've learned too much. I can't go back. So when you're going on your mindset journey, the same thing applies. You know too much to not be able to take that information, whether it's from day 1 or whether it's from day 300. That information should hit different every single time you listen to it. If it doesn't, you're not growing. If you can't take this information and unmold it to really dig in and dissect, if you're not able to do that, then you haven't grown yet. And I say that with all due respect. You have to take the foundation. And this has to be solid before you can move on to the next step. Okay? So, all 5 pillars, they have to be in check, or you don't pass the test. You have to pass the test. Form check. Okay? Every time we had a graduation, we had to do form, which was remembering like this square or whatever we were doing. You had to do a sparring activity with another partner you had to spar with. And so those were just 2 pieces of the things that we had to do. And you had to be able to do it precisely, or you didn't get the next belt. You weren't ready. And I can tell you that was really hard to have to retest. Really hard. Breaking a board, you get 2 or 3 tries, and if you don't break it, you don't move on. The board break could be the easiest thing, but it could be the hardest thing. There were some kicks, they just don't land. But that wasn't the kick for me. I needed to find my kick. I needed to find what worked for me. But I had to do every single step. And I had to dig deeper every single time. And when I was ready, I got where I was supposed to be. So, take this mindset and apply it to your personal development journey. Go through it. Go through it over and over and over, so that when you get to a place, you're not stuck. That you know you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And that the things just kind of roll off your tongue. That's when you know that you've graduated and that you're ready. So I'll see you next time.